So, a lot of people that are trying to make sense of what's going on in the United States today are very reasonably looking to the 1930s in Germany. And I think that's partly because that's really like the best example, and maybe the only example that most Americans have really learned about in some level of depth about like modern authoritarianism. But as someone who specifically studied 20th century Latin American politics, might I suggest you read a little bit about the Argentinian military junta from 1976 to 1983. Really, any of the South American bureaucratic authoritarian juntas would be really interesting and could be very illuminating on what's going on in our country right now. While we're at it, that would actually be a good vocab term for you to learn before you dive into this topic, bureaucratic authoritarianism. I, in all my papers, just wrote it as BA because it's way too many vowels, but it was coined by an Argentine political scientist, Guillermo O'Donnell. He's sort of the preeminent scholar on this era, this time period of all of these South American dictatorships that he argued, rightfully, I think, that they were unique. There was something different. We couldn't just compare it to other authoritarian regimes we'd seen in other parts of the world throughout the 20th century. Bureaucratic authoritarianism has a lot of characteristics, and some of them don't really apply to the United States, but some of them do. And most specifically, it's this idea of rather than an authoritarian state that is completely led and directed by one strong man, right? Adolf, Mao, Stalin, whatever, that instead what we see like an oligarchy, this coalition of elites from the military, from whatever the kind of governing political party is, but also from the experts in the fields of the economy and technology specifically. The idea is like that political democracy is too slow. We have too many voices that are trying to solve problems related to the economy and other things. And what we need to do is we need to cede over to the experts. And in this case, the experts are the kind of capitalist allies of the state. And of course, like we see in most authoritarian regimes, we see severe and violent repression of opposition groups and political dissidents. In Argentina, this was specifically young people. It was especially members of the press, students, people who were anywhere on the left end of the spectrum. In Argentina, the state led a so-called dirty war where they literally just like disappeared people. They used ruthless tactics. For example, we've discovered that a lot of the young leftists, the young people that just disappeared in the night, they were known as los desaparecidos. We learned from later investigations and trials that they were killed by just flying them in an airplane out over the ocean and dropping them in the ocean. By the way, we know this because of the years and years and years of work and activism of los madres de los desaparecidos, who would join together in the Plaza de Mayo in Buenos Aires day after day after day for years, demanding information about what had happened to mostly their sons. So all I'm saying is don't limit yourself to just like one decade in one country. We have plenty of authoritarian regimes that we can study to help us understand what's going on.